I'm going to start feeding into it. Thanks for bearing with me here.
No, I don't mind. I'm having a blast either way.
Me too. This is all part of the fun.
uh, Nixon was so cute. He was like, I feel like if you guys just make really good podcasts, that's all that matters. And I was like, Joseph and I have a blast. It will be great because we're having fun. That
Yep.
was like obvious.
Yep. So I'm gonna go live
Okay.
and I'm gonna roll the intro. Here we
Okay.
go. So we are here. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. So the news is that we had a bit of technical difficulty, and we ran 25 minutes of the show and realized that I did not have any sound coming in. And
Mhm.
thank you, Christopher, who pointed that out on the chat. Hopefully, he's also able to rejoin and actually be able to hear me. So, yeah, so this is a take two of part two stream that with Mackenzie. So we're gonna pretend as if we've never done this before and just redo the whole thing.
Brand new. I've never been here.
Okay. So I'm gonna just forget the lines that I'm supposed to say. And
Mhm.
let me see here. Let me refresh the screen. Okay, so looks like we're feeding pretty good. So we're gonna kick it off again. So today, welcome to today's session, Let's Talk series, and we're kind of titling this back to Let's Talk because we felt that tips and tricks just kind of belongs in there, and we want to do
Mhm.
a bit of a news coverage and something interesting just in general, and then also have tips and tricks as portion of Let's Talk series with Mackenzie. And well, welcome Mackenzie for second
Hello.
time. um, and I wanted to just generally have this session on Tuesdays, but due to schedule conflicts and some technical difficulties, we may have it in different time or different day of the week. So just bear with us. If you're able to see this all live, that's great. Please leave some chat in the box. Then we'll be able to talk with you and just kind of engage into conversation. If you're watching this on recording, no problem. Do leave some comments, and we'll be happy to discuss things with you there as well. And last time when you were on, Mackenzie, 2 weeks
Mhm.
ago, we had pretty good amount of comments and questions, so that was quite nice. And we would like to continue that sort of conversation with a couple of folks. So
Yeah.
let's make sure we stay on top of some of the comments that gets left on the video, and I think that way we can continue to engage with some of those folks. So with that, I want to discuss a couple of things. So last week, I spoke about Envision, which is a new rendering engine from Chaos. And they have a couple of new technology and new features they're trying to implement into Envision. And I think it's definitely worth taking a look since you personally haven't had a look yet. So, in a future episode, we can possibly take a look at it together again and also dive into some of the advanced features of Envision. And then I also wanted to talk about a video that I have released, which was about 3D Basecamp and Trimble dimensions. And I wanted to kind of share that screen with you. So let me do a bit of screen sharing. Bear with me. Okay, so this was the video that I had released, 2024 SketchUp 3D Basecamp and Trimble Dimensions. And this will actually happen at the end of the last year. And I only got around releasing it middle of February, so it took some time around due to all the things that I had to do.
Mhm.
putting together this type of video is not definitely, it's a monumental task, I want to say,
Mhm.
but it catches the vibe really well. So I wanted to just kind of release it, and therefore I've had it. And I'm gonna just lower the volume a little bit.
Yeah,
But
because this is a big event too.
yeah, this time around it was bigger event since it was combined between normal 3D Basecamp, a couple thousand people, and then about 5,000 people of Trimble Dimensions. So it was 7,000 I heard of a total number. So
Holy
that's,
cow.
yeah, it was a
That's a
pretty
big
big
jump.
event. Yep, and there was a lot of things to see, and of course it's Vegas, so you got a ton of things to see there, and there's vast amount of people as well. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
try to skip this ad, and uh, I always like doing
Whoa.
their scavenger hunt. So yeah,
So I have a question
yeah, go
because
ahead.
I saw your little thing about the scavenger hunt, and I'm glad you're bringing it up because I didn't realize they did that. Is it like throughout the entire time, or is it just the first day? Like,
So there's a little bit of behind story there. So
mhm.
one of the thing is,
Oh my gosh, those puppies.
yeah, you're totally distracted there.
Sorry.
So it is throughout the show, but
Mhm.
one of the guy basically opened it up in the first 3 hours or so, where when the
Mhm.
event kicked it off, um, uh, and probably a lot of people just claimed all the stuff out of the chest that we are
Mhm.
supposed to open up. So there wasn't, well, there was nothing left by the time I got to it.
Yeah.
But for the shot, I asked like,
Yeah.
can you put some stickers in so that I can at least
That's
show
perfect.
something? So
Yeah.
that's what I did, because I probably did it on the last, near the last day. So
Yeah. Well,
uh,
because by that point you were done with your sessions as well, right?
right. So I was more occupied doing
Mhm.
all the sessions and everything. That's
Mhm.
why I was more late in that regard. But yeah, it was blast doing that sort of scavenger hunt. I just enjoy solving puzzles and finding things. So it was definitely something that I did,
Oh my
and
goodness, yeah.
I wanted to show you. In addition to all the people that I have met and some globe ping pong, but I
Ugh,
got
there
to
it is.
run some heavy machineries and move some earth, and I did some cool shots of 360
Oh
camera.
my goodness.
Yeah,
I just like I would have lost my marbles. I remember there were playgrounds that sometimes had those diggers, but like little playground ones, and you would just move two arms, and it would like lift the entire arm or move the digger.
right.
And I had the best time with that.
Yeah,
So to do it in real life, absolutely.
I definitely had a great time moving some earth and
Mhm.
running those big machineries.
Mhm.
So yeah, and that was the offsite bit that belongs to Trimble Dimension. So it's quite a lot of fun. That was just added to the normal 3D Basecamp aspect because there's now more things to the
Mhm.
event.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Oh my gosh, the dogs.
totally distracted.
I would be too. I'd be there the whole time.
Yeah, so do a bit of a watch if any of you haven't, but that was a fun video to make as well. So hopefully that shows.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Because I feel like every time you post those, it's like it's just a cool insider, you know? And I love the fact that this is me as like interior design side. I love that you do a little hotel room show. And I've actually stayed in the same kind of style of hotel room at that hotel. And as soon as you walked in, I was like, I know this place. I remember all this. And so it was really cool for me to be able to see it and whatnot. But I do feel like your videos of the entire event make me excited about them.
Hmm.
So I can't imagine how everyone else feels.
Well,
Thrilled. I can tell
yeah,
you.
I'm glad that it was able to capture those sort of moments.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a fun video to make, fun event to attend. Hopefully, I get to see you on the next event and some of
Hmm.
you on watching this
Hmm.
video. So the next thing that I also wanted to cover was about Evolve Lab. And we talked about Evolve a little bit because we had the technical
Yep.
difficulty to this show. But
So you won't get my extreme reaction that I had
yes, the
the
first time
first time, but
reaction. This is the
I
second
can do it
time
again.
reaction. Yes. So I'm gonna get a second time reaction, and so let's do a bit of a screen share again, and entire screen here, share. All right. So Evolve Lab is a company who has several different type of apps, and I'm actually familiar with them because of a couple of apps that they have, and I
Mhm.
know several folks at Evolve Lab, and and actually because I did a Revit and SketchUp interoperability, or I called it the SketchUp and Revit's parallel universe on Basecamp session, and we were talking about ways to have interoperability between SketchUp and Revit. Therefore, I talked about one of their app as well. So I have been somewhat acquainted with them and also a couple of their apps. So I was excited when I heard that on top you can see Chaos now acquires Evolve Lab, extending your AI driven workflows. And this is quite exciting. Let's run through a couple of their apps to have better understanding what they do. So, in terms of the apps, they got Varus, which is sort of the AI driven tool. This basically takes the prompts from either SketchUp model or Revit, a different type of modeler, and
That's just spectacular.
yeah, you'll be able to run some of these conceptual renderings, which is also one of my other topic that I spoke at 3D Basecamp. And it is able to generate these fantastic looking images, and they have a bit
Yeah.
more ability to hone into certain aspect or portion of an image and do different type of image generation. So you can go through a lot of ideation by using this software. So I find it quite useful for especially conceptual rendering portion when you're just talking about something. You saw how it was just a little crumpled up
Mhm.
thing, and then it just took some prompts and then redressed things up. So it takes the overall, or it recognizes the geometry, and then it just
Mhm.
kind of dress things up with the prompt. So it stays generally true to the geometry and try to come up with a couple of, I guess, the atmospheric type of style of image. And you
Oh
can
my gosh,
definitely say the weather or the region or style or the mood of an image, and it is able to generate that type of images. So, which is
yeah.
quite
Holy cow.
interesting. And SketchUp does something similar too, which I will talk about it in a near future with you as well.
Mhm.
But Varus is definitely worth noting, and Glyph is the one of the Revit plugin that automates standardized multiple documentation tasks that we normally do on our daily tasks, sheet creation,
Mhm.
tagging, dimensioning, that sort of thing.
Could have used it today. Said it
Yep,
earlier. Still
yep,
could.
yep. And I would love to use it. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's basically a Revit tool. And then Morphus is when you do a real time interactive generative type of design.
Mhm.
So say parking lot configuration, and then you're able to shape it, and it just generates those type of shapes and programming based on the parameters that you input prior. And then next is Helix, which is the piece, the interoperability thing that I was talking about. It is
Mhm.
able to bridge between SketchUp and Revit and push one geometry to the other. So you change something on SketchUp, and live it changes on Revit side. And all the geometries are understood natively. So something being tagged on SketchUp side as a wall, then it will be understood as a wall, and floor as a floor on Revit. So it is not just a 3D geometry, it is actually workable native aspects to Revit, which is quite big. Not a lot of softwares are able to do that. So
Mhm.
that is definitely worth taking a look if you're interested in interoperability between SketchUp and Revit. And Bento is just a collection of a lot of free Revit add-ins that one might need. And we have a couple of add-ins that we utilize, you and I, in
Yep.
renumbering Revit views and
Mhm.
turning on and off point cloud visibility, which
Mhm.
takes a couple of steps to do. So having those type of aspects, and it is this app is a collection of those things. So yeah, I'm quite excited because Chaos has always been understood as a rendering company or rendering engine owner company, and
Mhm.
they have been lately expanding their areas. So, for example, Enscape now has the environmental impact. So they have Enscape Impact. That's what it's called, and then it basically does a environmental impact studies for you. So they're tapping into not just the rendering area, but tapping into some other aspects of that we do in architectural practices. And now they're tapping into some AI driven workflows and some of these tools that are meant for Revit. So it's becoming more of a toolbox rather than
Mhm.
a just a rendering source. I mean, between V-Ray and Enscape, they share a lot of rendering that they do, or
Handling.
yeah, just a lot of feature, and it's been sort of the industry standard in many
Mhm.
aspects, especially in like production movies and stuff. So it's been big, but now that they acquired different tool set, I'm excited to see what they're able to just kind of put it together. So yeah, that's sort of the news piece that I wanted to discuss. And I wanted to do a sponsor segment to our show, which is the microphone that we are using from Fifine. And the model name is K688. Let me enlarge our screen since we want to do a little
Can
sponsor
see it.
segment
It's so
here.
beautiful.
Yeah, and you've been hearing my voice through this microphone, and that's what this sounds like. And Mackenzie is kindly doing a little bit of modeling there. And it's a
Yep.
K688CT, which is a model
Mhm.
that comes with the microphone boom arm. And that's what Mackenzie's got. It's coming in a white version to suit all the cable and the
Mhm.
microphone and the arm. And mine's a black version that didn't come with the boom armor. It's a completely separate one that I have, but I favor the black one. But you prefer the white, is what you
Yep,
said, right?
I did.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's looking good. So if you prefer the white look, then you can go with what Mackenzie's got over there, and then you can go with the black if you prefer a bit more stealthy look.
Mhm.
And it frankly sounds amazing.
It really
Your
does.
yeah, your sound much improved since last time we had this session from the itty bitty earbuds, the wireless earbuds that you
Yes.
had. Yeah, the
Yes.
sound was, I mean, generally okay, but it didn't have the, I don't know, the oomph or the spirit of the podcast.
And I don't know, there's, like, something about, like, even I can, like, hear myself, like, it's, like, all of the ASMR, like, little tiny things, like, it's so nice. I like
Yes.
hearing the voice in it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so you are currently connected to the back of the microphone and you're
Mhm.
real time monitoring the sound.
Yep.
And I'm doing that. That's why I wear a headphone and I'm hearing your voice through my headphone through the microphone. But in real time, I'm able to monitor my sound. So I'm able to gauge whether I'm too loud or too soft, that sort of thing. And it's really useful. And it's proven that it is a quite good sound because I've been using it for quite some time now, Fifine, and this microphone is quite economically available and it
Mhm.
sounds quite good as you hear now. So if you're interested in, I'll leave the link in the description for you guys to follow and perhaps check it out. And yeah, here is the Fifine K688. Thank you.
We're very
So
happy with it.
yes, and we'll move on to the main bit, which is tips and tricks of SketchUp. So let me actually share my screen to go over a couple of things that I prepared prior. Trust me, I do prepare things sometimes.
I don't know you to not prepare.
I don't know what you're talking about, Joseph.
I have known you for many years. I've never known you to be unprepared.
All right. Let me see. I'm gonna share my screen so you guys could see what is going on mine. Share. So we have a blank screen with group versus component. So one before we had talked about layer and the tag system of
Mhm.
SketchUp because yeah, now the layer is now tag. So the next slide that I wanted to talk about is just the groups versus component. Do you remember? I don't mean to put you in a spot, but do
No,
you
no, it's
remember the difference between component and group?
so a group is like a cluster of things that you can put together, objects, and then a component is something, and there was two different ways of doing a component too, wasn't there? Like you can alter a component and it just affects the one component, or you can alter the other thing and it affects all of them.
Right. So the component is, I think it's clear if I were to demonstrate it this way. So
Mhm.
let's make some rectangles. And whilst this is probably not the right size, I'm going to make this into a right click it. I'm just going to make it into a component. You will have a little dialog shows up. You can put meaningful name to it. Um, so I'll say box one, create. And then I can have another copy of this. I'm going to copy this by move copy.
Mhm.
And I've got this set of maybe it's like a chair of some kind. Then I can have another bigger rectangle that represents like a table of some sort. And then I'm going to right click it and make it into a group.
Perfect.
So it's like a tables and chair set, and then I'm gonna select entire thing and making into a group. And why do I do that? Well, because when you are a group, then even if I change something within the group, it's not going to impact something that is happening on another group. Whereas if I were to go in here and then change the size of the chair, because they were components, they change. So in general, component is repeated, therefore it maintains the same shape and size. I take size back because you can scale things differently, but in
Yeah.
general,
Mhm.
component is same repeated thing. So in the world of architecture, you have one type of door, and then you may have a different size door. So door, window, chair type of things that gets repeated multiple times, it's better to have them as a component. Whereas if you want to have like a set of table, because you may have a set of table, but and it is the same type of model, but also at the same time you may have it slightly differently arranged. So maybe
Mhm.
one chair is slightly rotated for better looks, and so it may be the same type of tables and chairs, but having them as a one group so that they can be repeated without duplicating something,
Mhm.
that's when you need group. In general, if it's like a shrubbery, a collection of components, I tend to make it a group. And like if it's a tables and chair set, I typically make it as a group. But the tables usually is a component because
Yeah.
it's the same table that gets repeated, although I made it into a group. So if that's the case, then you can right click the group and then make it into a component. So in this case, now that became a component. That one back there is still not. So
Mhm.
what you can do is you can delete that, and I'm just going to repeat this once more. And then in here, because of this table, I can move it, and it's not going to impact anything because currently it's inside of a group. But if I go in here and actually change the size of this table, then it is going to impact the other table on the other side. So just have that mindset as you play with the geometry group versus component. That's a really, I guess, significant impact into your overall
Mhm.
modeling organization. And Generally, making component is more preferable, but there are moments that you want to keep them as a group. So, uh, yeah, you just need to be mindful when you want to use it as a group, and you need to have a good, like, say, something like a single floor. So when a floor is made, then you have walls and
Mhm,
floors
mhm.
and windows and doors. You don't want to make them into a component unless you have identical floors
Yeah, that you
throughout.
need to
Yeah,
yes.
but
Yeah,
each floor may have a slightly different things, like slightly bigger rooms or slightly
yeah.
smaller rooms. So if it is not going to be repeated, or if you don't want to deal with being repeated, then you want to
Mhm,
make it into a group. But the windows inside are going to be only handful of types that gets
mhm.
repeated throughout. Hopefully you haven't made windows unique and different every single one of them, which is a standard practice, right? So then you want to have the windows as a component. Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and if you think of it on a building scale, that's the case. If you think of it as a furniture scale, then
Mhm.
if you have a table and all the four legs that goes around, the legs are components, and the tabletop is a one group because it doesn't get really repeated.
Yep.
And then you just rotate them around or array them around the four corners so that the legs are identical. Let me show you the next slide, which is component edit hide rest of model. And I believe the next one that I was supposed to talk about is unhide all. And I think I did talk about this on a last session, didn't I? So if you were to try and look inside of the building, what I like to do is basically here you can right click and do hide to look
Mhm.
inside the building. Some people prefer the tags.
Yeah, to do the
uh,
eyeball.
yeah, and then basically turn off certain aspects to be able to see inside. But it's kind of generally in my muscle memory to be able to hide and unhide things, and
Mhm.
those were the shortcuts that I kind of mentioned last time. So Shift H for hiding, and then Shift U for unhide all. That is what I'm incurring here. So hide, and then if I go to, I believe, edit and unhide all, which is a Shift U, and it brings everything back. If I were to do layer controlling, then you can see how when I hit roof, it's going to hide this roof as well. So if you have multiple set of buildings, it's going to hide entire roof. And also, this is a single story building, but if you want to go into first floor of three-story building, then you've got to hide the roof, second floor, then you'll be able to see the first floor. And controlling that via tagging or layering system can be quite troubling. So it's more preferable that if you had, okay, indeed, just a roof and a different floor, then you go hide to see inside of something, and then manipulate something, and then you do unhide all to bring everything back.
Mhm.
So that's my preferred way of visual control, and that's always been proven to be useful for me. So
Mhm.
I generally recommend that usage and having the muscle memory of hide and unhide for your control. And then I want to talk about cut, copy, paste in place.
Paste in place was my favorite.
Yes, yes. So paste in place is actually available in a lot of different applications, such
It
as
definitely is.
Photoshop,
Mhm.
Illustrator. Even nowadays, paste in without formatting is a thing too. So Control Shift V is not a default shortcut. We talked about shortcut on the last session, but preferences, and then you can go into the shortcuts. And then here you can look for paste in place. And then I have Control Shift V as that. Photoshop has this shortcut. So
Yeah.
I don't know why SketchUp never bothered to get this as a default, but you can designate that to your shortcut. And that will be displayed also here, paste in place. So if I had copied something, and let's say, for example, I wanted to have this lighting component, And you see how all of these lighting components are just kind of floating around. But
Mhm.
it would kind of make sense if that was attached to our ceiling or the roof model. So what I would like to do, and since this is right now a group, if I were to look just at this, you see how I see the ceiling of it,
Mhm.
but I'm not seeing any lighting in here, so I can't really configure that correctly. So if I want to put those lightings into that group, then I can hide this first and then select all of these lights that I intend to move into a different group, and then cut Control X, which is a shortcut, unhide all, come into and a double click to get into this, and then I'm gonna incur paste in place, which is Control Shift V or this button right here, and then I'm gonna paste that in there. So I effectively have moved those lightings to this roof slash ceiling
Mhm.
group, and then now I can hide it, and then all of those lights also go away. So I'm not saying that's the best practice in terms of bringing lights into a
Yeah.
ceiling or roof group per se, but that's the level of controls that you can do. And if I decide to actually take it out rather than explode and regroup, that can be a little troubling, especially this one. You see how it's not really. It's got several layers of groups, so you can explode it, and then it's gonna come out of the group tagging. It gets all messed up. So in that case, I can select all of it and cut it away again, come out, and then hide this and paste in place. And that's going to go back to the way it was before. So you have different levels of control with paste in place. And Quan Trang said, "Hello, is there a way to unhide objects nested in groups?" No, unless you're inside of that group, unhidle only does things at the level that you are. Unfortunately, that's not a thing. But if you save the scene and have a specific thing shown, the scene will even unhide things that are in nested area. So, for example, let me demonstrate this. Inside of here, I'm gonna hide this parapet that was around the roof, and then I
Mhm.
come out of it. If even if I hit unhide all, it's not gonna do anything because
Oh.
that hidden element is inside of a nested group. That's what Quan was asking. However, if my scene had the nested things shown, so if I were to click on Aerial 1, then you see how that came back up. So that's why I prefer to have this modeling scene, which I discussed in the last session with you, so that even if I had gone in here and then accidentally hid something and never realized that I hid those,
Yeah.
it's a common occurrence that we forget things, that we have hid something, and then I come out of it. I go my jolly way of modeling things in here, and later realize that I actually had hid something. Then it's gonna trouble me later.
Yeah.
But if we get in the habit of clicking the model view frequently, then it's going to get those things back. So it reminds us, oh, no, I didn't actually lose them. I was just
Mhm.
was accidentally hidden. So yeah, to get to the nested group on hiding, I would typically recommend using a view or scene rather than hide on hide. But hide on hide is really meant for temporary lifting effect so that you can see inside of things or over the wall, that sort of thing, and utilize it as unhide all just to get everything back. But very good question, Quan.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
I didn't know that
yeah,
either, so
Mackenzie learned new thing.
I feel like I'm always going to on this.
No, you're more than welcome, and I'm glad I'm not just shouting into void. You are there to respond back to me like, "Oh, these are the interesting things." So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
No, I love it, and I'm gonna highlight paste in place again. That is, like, one of my favorite tools for so many practices in life. I think it just, like, it applies to so many things that you don't expect it to, and it makes
Right.
it a whole lot easier. Once you teach someone, they're like, "What?"
Yeah, it makes
Mhm.
so much sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then we are same thing, the hide and unhide thing,
Mhm.
which I just talked about. So, um, there are some things that I kind of teach as a tips and tricks, and obviously it's not like tried and truth. I mean, it is kind of tried and truth of my way, and I kind of title it as a best practice. So you do not absolutely have to follow it, but at least think about it and plan what may be effective and what works for you. In my case, adding numbers to things were helpful for both organization and also I can't really think of a unique name all the time. There's like only so much green trees or green red bricks that I can come up with. Coming up with all of these adjectives for describing color, I quickly run out due to my lack of English. So red one, red two, red three is a lot easier.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
So if you can't
Instead of
come up
dark, dark,
with,
dark.
yeah, and also like at when you start first you're modeling and sometimes you have these placeholder material like you kind of know it's going to be a brick but you don't know if it's going to be red brick, it's going to be gray brick because you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to name that and actually change it later, then your material won't make sense. So I just say material one, material two, but then also any of the materials that I do a bit of a heavy modeling, if it's a main material that's going to be throughout the building or if it's a material that I'm going to use for rendering type of things, then I put 01 dot. That basically puts every all of those materials to the top of the list, therefore I see them first. So if I ever decide to assign reflection or self elimination on rendering engines, then
Mm-hmm.
they will be always on the top of the list because they start with a number. So that's sort of the way I figured out myself that I want to organize my material as. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for example, here, if I know for sure this water material is going to receive some reflection on it later on, and this is a material that I'm going to play with a lot, then I'll just go ahead and put 01 dot pool. And if
Yeah.
it receives like secondary or tertiary hierarchy, then I may do 02 dot. But in this case, I could do 01 dot. And then if it's a material that these metal, again, I can say main building metal or whatever, but my preference is like call it metal 01 so that you can the next one is going to be metal 02 as you see, so I don't have to come up with something very very different.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe metal is one of the keyword for rendering engine of Enscape, so once
Oh,
you have that keyword within the name of the material, it applies
like an
similar,
automatic.
it
Yeah.
automatically. So if
Mm-hmm.
I called it pool because the moment I say water, it actually makes it into a water, and I didn't want it to be a ripply water, so I
Yeah.
just called it the pool because I wanted a bit more glossy effect on it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a way to just kind of go around that effect. But
That's
if it's a
clever.
metal, then it adds reflection by automatically applies that. And also grass is one other thing. If you call something
Mm-hmm.
grass, then it's gonna have these little fur things that stick out of it. So yeah, those are things that you can do. And then next, front end back color. We kind of talked about this
Mm-hmm.
as we were setting up our styles. There's a ton that I can go over in terms of styles, but we didn't really touch, I believe, on profiles per se.
No.
The profiles is something that kind of outlines your geometry. So in here, if I were to go to this one here, edges, and if I turn on profiles, you see how it is turning on profiles of these trees, or it's highlighting
Yeah.
the where the ends of the faces are into the space.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best description I can do. So you
An
see how
outline.
it outlines the shrubbery here and shrubs. And if I turn it off, then profile goes away. I generally prefer to turn them off, and here are the reasons. One, it can actually make your overall model look heavier than what it is. You can see if I turn this profiles on, You can see
Yeah,
all
the
of those,
inside.
the
Mhm.
inside, the lines are now becoming much darker and thicker. So it's not necessarily the look that I'm going for. So if I turn that off, it is vaguely there, but not in your face. And I actually went in and hid all the edges of these leaves. So when edges are hidden, then even though you turn on the profile, they don't come on. But there is a little tool that I may show later. But if I unhide all edges of this,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then if I happen to turn on the profile or edges, then it's gonna become really black, and that's not what you want.
Mhm.
So, my preference is to hide all the edges, but there is an extension which it does hide all edges. So, hide all edges. And then when you do that, then no profile comes on those. So, which is useful.
Yes, it is.
And also it not as much anymore, but in the olden days, turning on profiles used to be very heavy on your machine. So if you have very heavy model with a lot of trees and shrubberies and different type of geometries, like I can imagine, having a lot of those type of things within your scene.
Mhm.
And as you turn that on, as you orbit around, your computer is trying to think of ways to render that onto your screen, and it can really, really eat up your resource. Nowadays, SketchUp's been better, technology improved, you have much better hardware. But if you see your model just kind of being sluggish as you orbit things around,
Yeah.
the chances are the profiles can really play into it, especially when they're really thick. If any, I'll put in one to just kind of highlight the profile. So that's what I prefer. But
Oh,
if you have it really thick, then
looks kinda cartoony.
yeah, it is very, very cartoony, but also can make things not, I guess, nice. And also, it can actually make your computer come to a halt.
Okay.
So I prefer to keep it at one and turn it off, and just turn it on when I need to. So next thing is face style shortcuts. So there are different type of face styles. We kind of talked about the front and the back color in the previous session we did together. But there's also different kinds of face style, which is basically with icon displayed here. First one is, well, they call it the wireframe mode, which is kind of self-explanatory in my opinion.
Yep.
And then the next one is hidden line. I don't like this one. I don't know if hidden line makes sense.
It's the trees make it tough because they're blocking out some lines.
Yeah,
Because like, in Revit
hidden line is basically, yeah, go ahead and about Revit.
isn't in Revit, because 'cause I'm trying to think, like, the drawings that we've done, and whenever it's in hidden line, it can't I see, like, through things? Or
No,
am I not
that's a
able to?
wireframe.
Wireframe,
You
thank you.
see it
Okay.
through when it's a wireframe, and hidden
Okay.
line is sort of the industry term
Mhm.
for seeing geometry without shading. That's what it
Yeah,
means. I
yeah.
don't know why it means that, but that's a industry standard term for making shapes without shades. If
Mhm.
you want shades, then you have this mode called um, is it monochrome? Yes. Although it doesn't say it on the tooltip. So any of you SketchUp folks, if you're watching it, everything else says the wireframe mode, hidden line mode, shaded mode, and then textures. I guess it doesn't say texture mode. And then this one is monochrome mode, but it just says shaded using all same. So view here, and this is basically what we got: wireframe, hidden line, shaded with texture, and we are in the monochrome mode. And monochrome mode shows you the shading. And when I say shading, it basically means they're both white. These all the surfaces are white, and that's why you see no shading
Yeah,
whatsoever. But this one, you are able to distinguish the vertical surfaces versus
yeah.
the horizontal surface only because of the shading. And that shading gives you the understanding of the shape of geometry. You
Mhm.
can kind of tell with the hidden line mode, but it becomes a bit more distinguishable once you turn on the
Yeah.
shading. And that's the aspect that you see on SketchUp. And I appreciate how it is able to do that. But there is a downfall of that effect. If somebody looks at this and like, I've heard comments like, "Your ceiling looks too dark." It is not actually dark. It is just shading. And in real
Can you
life,
lighten that up?
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and in real life, your ceilings are actually much darker than other surfaces. So that is
Yeah.
actually true to the way it
Yeah.
is. Like if you look at your own camera view, your ceilings are always darker than your walls, even if they're
Mhm.
same color. That's just how
Mhm.
it is. But if you're just
Yeah.
so fixated on, I can always talk about this. But anyways, those are weird gripes of
Get on a
mine.
tangent. Get it
Yeah.
on a tangent.
Definitely. Um, here I actually made this into backface. So you remember
Mhm.
making
Mhm.
backface as a vibrant color so you can catch it miles away.
Yeah.
And if you click on this monochrome mode, the backface is basically become highlighted because you now have removed all the materials off
So
of the
true.
surface. So this was sort of the Easter egg that I built in so that even though it looked fine here with all the textures on, but in the heart, inside, it is
We know.
reversed.
Mhm.
So what you're meant to do is use right click it and then reverse it, and then that
I
that basically fixes it. And if we go to the material view again, you'll
Mhm.
see how this is now not the grass that I wanted. So I'm gonna have
Mhm.
to go back and sample this, and then apply grass in here.
Right. Mhm. So, is there anything negative about using the inside face?
Or back face. That's the
The
correct term.
back face, thank you.
Yeah.
Mm.
There is geometry wise, modeling wise,
Mhm.
there are some extensions that helps you model things,
Mhm.
generating surfaces and everything. Those geometry generating extensions don't behave all that well if it is reversed. So it
Okay.
does not know how to generate those faces correctly. And that becomes somewhat true. And there are some ways to manage that. So if you had accidentally had one of the face reversed, then you can actually
Mhm.
hover over correct oriented face and then right click it and orient faces. And then SketchUp is able to interpret
That's good.
what you got. But when you have like very, very complex, and I don't mean by like something as simple as this,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but when you have very complex lines that are touching each other, and then if you pull that, and if you actually had a broken up lines like that, SketchUp starts to struggle, and was more so in the olden days. So right now it is able to interpret that correctly.
Okay.
But I don't know if any of you or you yourself have struggled with this when you draw a rectangle, and then
Mhm.
when you have overlapping surfaces
Mhm.
like this, and when you start to push pull these things together, you might have noticed that it reverses things.
Yes.
It has gotten a lot better, and I'm not able to break it at this moment. And SketchUp in general has improved a lot in this one. But it used to be that this will basically break SketchUp and it won't orient things correctly because right now the backside is blue. But it is now much more difficult to break it. So generally,
Mhm.
SketchUp has improved their own method of orienting faces correctly. Because I looked at this from the top view, it is able to just kind of manage that. But if I were to start looking at this upside down, how do you
Mhm.
how do you manage that? And what if I actually meant to look at this in a sort of ceiling and meant
Yeah.
this, then you got to go ahead and right click the whole darn thing and then reverse face so that you are correct on a ceiling. And now it's like reverse here. So
Yeah.
generally, you want to make sure that geometry is correctly made. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm trying to cap this out so that it is actually uh,
Inside
something that
face.
is inside. That was very convoluted way of creating
No.
a block of some kind. But yeah, that's definitely more recommended to do. And another aspect is in rendering engines, if it's a reverse face, it used to be that, not as much anymore. And a lot of rendering engines have better implementation of this, and sometimes offer a option to render back face or not. So
Mhm.
they make distinguished action when it is front face versus back face. And some
Yeah.
V-Ray materials, or when V-Ray material is applied to the back face, it used to be that it doesn't behave correctly. So for example, even if you assign reflection on it, it doesn't show reflection on it because it's a back face. And it used to behave that way. So generally, back face is a no-no. Keeping everything
Mhm.
front face is a good practice. And I say this with little bit of timidness, because you saw how I reversed that, right?
Yep.
But if I were to go ahead and actually delete this face right here, sorry, delete the underneath face here, you see how the back face is still grass.
Yep.
So imagine all furs are shooting the opposite way, right?
Oh, no.
Right.
Yeah, so then you have just these little pokes.
Yeah. So before I reverse it, I really should have applied a default material on it so that it's no longer that material. You see how everything could
Yeah.
really get messed up once
Mhm,
you
mhm.
start messing with this. So one of the thing is, I also like to manage my materials. And let's say I decided to use this black dots material, and let's say I accidentally had applied it to underside of here,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
All these polka dots, but it's hidden here. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why this is listed here, because I'm not seeing it anywhere, but
Yeah.
it's there. It's like, where is it?
Where did I put that?
Where did I put that? And I'm scared to delete it because I can delete it, but it's
Mhm.
telling me like it's being used, and like I don't want to delete it if it's being used.
Yeah.
That happens a lot of time. So if you accidentally have painted onto your back face,
Mhm.
then it can cause a lot of troubles later on if you don't manage that all that well.
Yeah.
Interesting things.
No, no, it's again the organized brain.
Yeah, it's it is the organized brain side of me. It's like I can't take this.
Yeah. It's like I gotta have structure.
Yes. So I think I talked about the walk and the pan method to look
Yep.
around.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm gonna skip this part. And we talked about view angle. Did we? Do you recall? I don't remember if
I
I
don't
talked
think
about
I
it.
heard that.
Or you
I'd
don't.
be thrilled to relearn.
Yes, yes, let's do that. So here in general, if I hit Z, um, what I'm doing here is if I go to camera and then there's a zoom Z as a default. So if I hit that zoom, and then my cursor becomes a magnifying glass.
Mm-hmm.
And then that basically highlights also on the bottom right hand corner a field of view. These days, well, when you first SketchUp, when you start SketchUp, sorry, I'm dialing back. When you first start the SketchUp as a default, your default value of field of view is 35 degrees, which is
Oh,
quite a narrow view.
it's very close.
It used to be that wide angle lens was very
Mm-hmm.
hard to get.
Mm-hmm.
But in this day and age, with all the iPhones and everything, everybody's very, very used to wide angle lens.
Yeah.
So they are somewhat more used to distorted image of the wide angle lens.
Yeah.
So I would argue that 35-degree for default field of view is no longer default, or is people not accustomed to it anymore. So the first thing that I do, and you'll notice it when I hit model, my field of view is 60 degrees. I
Mm-hmm.
change it to 60 degrees because I'm more used to this method. And frankly, in a lot of architecture workflow, I feel like the wider, I don't want to say wider the better, but around 60-degree
Mhm.
ish is something more favorable because you're able to see more and people are used to this angle of view.
Yeah, I agree.
Some people may argue against this, still say 35 and 50 millimeter lens is the golden standard, and I get that, and I understand the photography and the nifty 50 is a thing in the world of photography, and I get it. But people with smartphones, iPhones, all the phones, they are used to this wider view. And
Mhm.
you're seeing me in this much wider lens than usual, too. So people are used to this and they're used to the distortion of an image of a wide angle lens. So my kind of best practice is to always increase it to 60 degrees and even push it a little bit further if I wanted to. And I can do that by um,
Like
well,
you can move.
not zooming. This is just a zooming, but I can do that by typing in different values. So
Mhm.
90 DEG, which is degree, enter, and then it'll distort it a little bit even further with 90-degree field of view. It may look a bit more now things are like leaning really.
Mhm.
Um, it's arguable. I feel I kind of like the really wide angle
I
type
do
of view,
too.
but
Yeah.
again, some people don't really like this.
Yeah.
So pick your poison. But in my humble opinion, I think people should stick to 60 degrees as a default. So that's something that I do immediately when I start off a model.
Yeah.
And like sometimes you get into interior scenes and like people are looking at it 35-degree as a default and like what am I
It's too
looking at? And
close.
you also struggle to like even
Yeah.
navigate around because you're bumping into walls and such. And that's why this being able to look around is helpful, but
Yeah.
like you can't really see anything at this point. So
Well, and I
I
feel like my clients, like, typically for a rendering, they always want it to be wider angle because you get to see more of the space.
Yeah. So you can
Mhm.
definitely hit Z once and then type in 60 DEG, enter, and then it gives you a little
Yeah.
bit more room to look at things. And I think seeing that relativity between the object that you want to look at and the
Mhm.
context is kind of important, especially
Mhm.
when you're talking about your views and the feel of the space, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
There is, however, even if you have really wide angle, 90 degrees, you can put things in 2-point perspective so that there's no leaning edges. It's a thing, but once you orbit around, it actually puts it out of 2-point perspective. So I don't think that is all that meaningful. So you can see
Does
how
it like you need to re-click it every time?
is that, yeah. So you have to re-click it every time. And it always
Mhm.
fixes it to a horizontal in order to do
Mm,
2 point.
mhm.
It's like a 2-point perspective science, but it always snaps you into this looking to your horizon.
Yeah.
So I don't like it. It's weird. I don't know. But it will highlight on the top left hand corner 2-point perspective. If somebody really wants it, then you can do it. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, to go back, 60-degree is what I prefer.
I feel like the two-point perspective would be good for students, because I remember we had to draw
I
a lot of things,
I
I'm
did
like,
that. Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
that would be, don't do this, but a little bit of a cheat method."
Yeah,
Mhm.
I remember doing that as a hacky method. I
Yep.
mean,
Or at least to learn.
in our days there was no
Nowadays.
chat GPT. So,
Nope. Nope.
you guys have now the students have chat GPT. So
Mhm.
you guys got it good. I didn't. So
Nope.
2-point perspective cheat off of SketchUp was the best I can get at that time.
Oh my gosh,
That's
honestly.
yeah, that's sad.
We used,
Um
just a piece of string and a
yes.
thimble or something.
Right, right, right. Um and I think this will be the last slide of today, but
Okay.
so the image size export type of thing is also a good tip because in the olden days, it used to be that I think 4,000 pixel was like a max. Or they had a cap in terms of how many pixels that it is able to export. And again, there are a few shortcuts that I like to assign, which is on export. I do Control 3 for 3D model and then Control 2 for 2D graphics. And when you're trying to export a quick image off of your model, I do hit Control 2, which is 2D graphics export. And then I will go to my desktop. And then basically it will present me a couple of things. You might be defaulted into like a CAD export, but I like to export a lot of JPEGs this way. So I changed to JPEG and then always click on options to make sure what you're exporting is exactly what you want. So use view size, and they have been better with this because now SketchUp offers, and this only happened maybe 5-6 years ago, but they used to not have this line scale multiplier, which basically meant that in order for you to have a very thin line, just like how you are seeing on your screen, that you had to multiply a lot of pixels so for 1600 you had to put in like 4000 or 5000 or even 6000 to have a really crisp thin line
Oh,
over
wow.
your shapes. Otherwise, it looked really blocky. That was a
Mhm.
dead giveaway whenever you generated an image off of a SketchUp. And when your outlines look blocky,
Yeah.
my professors were like, no, don't generate images off of SketchUp. It looks like crap. Um, and you can always overcome that by putting more pixels in or making the lines thinner, and they actually look fantastic. That was my hack back in the days. But now
Mhm.
that there is a line scale multiplier, so I want to show you the difference. So this one we're gonna do. This is a multiplier 1, so M1. Let's do 1 now, and it'll take a moment, and then I will also do multiplier of 2, which will make it even thicker, I believe. Does it? Okay, it doesn't. Why won't it? Oh, okay, because we're in the view size. So
Mhm.
here I'll do 2, and then I'll export M2, and then I'm gonna do a point 1, a point 5 for
Oh, that's
comparison.
great.
So point 5, and then so first thing I do is actually uncheck this, and then I put in different values whenever I am exporting my views to make it look better. But I'll say zero point 0.5. So let's have a look. Pull up my desktop, and then so this is my zero point 0.5. You see how the lines are crisp, thin.
Mhm.
It kind of shows it shows it does the ambient occlusion. I don't know if you remember that term from last time, but it
Yeah.
shows the where the faces are met each other, and it just throws in a little bit of shadow or like a thin line to define the edge, and it really makes you read geometry or model really better. Whereas if you increase it a little bit, it starts to become a little bit cartoony,
Yeah.
and then if you push it a little bit further, now we're getting into this thick profile issue, right? It's
Yeah.
looking really blocky. And when you presented this to your professor, it was like a dead giveaway. You're working with SketchUp. It doesn't look good. So that was a thing back then,
Things Joseph
unfortunately.
hates to hear.
Yeah. So I always made sure that things look crisp, and dialing down either the multiplier or upping your resolution is the solution to that. And I typically, whenever I export, I put in something like 4,000 pixels just so that for the width,
Yeah.
because width is the wider usually on your images, right?
Mhm.
So 4,000 pixels across, and the at that point, a line scale multiplier could still just stay as 1, and then anti-aliases. Do you know what anti-alias means?
Mm-mm.
So basically, think of it this way. All of your pixels on your image is it's this is like an industry term, and graphic design and everything. All of your pixels on your monitors are gridded, right? So when a black line is going across diagonally, then what do on this gridded thing? Do you show black on one block and then one over at a diagonal angle, or do you want to
Mhm.
show one here and then black,
The
black,
next
black,
one.
black, black, and
Yeah.
then it's gonna look kind of
Yeah, yeah,
staggering,
yeah.
and it doesn't look like a smooth line. What
Yeah.
anti-aliasing does is instead of doing black, 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 they're gonna do black, gray, black, gray, black, gray, black, gray, and then
Oh, yeah.
so that it makes it look like a smooth line rather than
Mm.
one blocky kind of staggering look of a black line. So it's basically
Clever.
smoothing the line if you
Yeah.
in a more SketchUp-y way of description.
Yeah.
And then compression, a better quality is what I prefer. That used to not be available, but that is now there. So this is typically the value that I put in, and I can do that pavilion. And that's going to be similar to like say 0.5 of
Mhm.
the multiplier. So let me show you. So this one is the 2, and then this is the what I have put in 4,000. So it looks crisp, and there's actually more resolution for you to play with, especially when you're doing a little bit of Photoshop on top or do a little bit of image editing. There's now more rooms and pixels to play with since now you have higher pixel count.
Yeah.
Given that now your phones generate like more than 4,000 pixels across, now you become a bit more par with in terms of resolution. Because if you were to just generate without unchecking this view size, because my screen is 1980 by 1080, so it's a
Yeah.
1080p monitor, and then because of all the tool sets that are on corners, it is also making my viewport smaller, and that is actually true representation of what my viewport is.
Mm.
Therefore, that's why it's saying 1608. If I were to drag some of these tabs smaller and wider, it's going to give me different numbers because then it's a different.
Hmm. Mhm.
You see how it's not 1605 or whatever. So yeah, it's gonna give me different sizes, but sticking to higher resolution means that you can crop a bit more or a better room to play with. So that's definitely a tip for you to generate better images of a SketchUp so that you have more rooms to play with.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Okay, I'd like to stop there in terms of the SketchUp tips and tricks, and we will definitely plan to continue.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I've got some travel plans coming up for next month or so. So I'll
Get a
be,
nice vacation.
yes. Well, I think I'm gonna continue working
Mhm.
and potentially do some shots. I guess it's fine to say where I'm going. So I'm going to South Korea. It's been about 10 years since I visited the
Mhm.
country, and it's gonna be probably a while until I visit back again too. So I'm trying to make most out of it,
You're gonna
and
eat your way through is what I'm hearing.
yes, I'm gonna do that, and we're gonna go a bit of a sightseeing too. So I wanted to make some, I don't know, travel series, maybe
Mhm.
video, if time or my mental space allows, and
Yeah.
between all the family visiting and that sort of things. If I have, because I'm still kind of working for my day job as well, so I'm gonna have to find some time for it, unfortunately. And because of that, I'm not gonna be able to do more stream with you for next little bit, since we can't be on the same time zone. We'll be on a completely different side of the earth.
Yep.
So we may have to pause it. If anything, I'm gonna try to find some chance to maybe do streaming on my own out there if space is ever available. If
Yeah.
not, then we'll look to continue this conversation in this series of streaming. Maybe mid March is
Yeah.
what we're looking to do. And
Yeah.
in the meantime, you guys, if you have any thoughts on topics or things that you would like me to talk about or Mackenzie to talk about, and if you have any questions about some of the things that we talked about today or any previous sessions, please feel free to comment down below. We'll be happy to have a look at them and provide best answer possible. And um, yeah, and we'll look to continue this conversation down the marathon of
Yeah.
tips and tricks SketchUp, and we can maybe teach Mackenzie a couple of tips and tricks about SketchUp.
We would love that. Yeah, I think that's Joseph and I both wanted this to be something that, would be exciting for us to do. And I think the more that we do it, the more it's going to be. And just our starting point ended up colliding with a couple of trips that we already had planned. So it's okay.
Yep.
No, good still.
Yeah, we'll
Mhm.
continue and we'll perhaps see on the next session. And
Mhm.
thank you again, Mackenzie, for joining in. And we'll look to continue our session in the future episodes.
Yeah.
And I'll see all of you next time. Bye.
Bye.